Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David, and this episode is for UFC 307, Pereira V Rountree Jr. So I finally got to 307. I finally got to the card. And before I even talk about this card, I want to point out that this card has already been spoiled for me in various points. Okay, so 2 fights were spoiled on this card. It was the main event and Aldo versus Aldo versus Bautista. So just everything else is new to me. I went into this card, I scored it with an open mind, and I'm back with the results. Let's start off with the fact that this Utah crowd is a really shitty Utah crowd. And shitty not in the bad way, in the sense that they're dead and that they don't care about the fights. No, they're really enthusiastic, but they're just mean. And, I don't want to say this because I guess, it's fighting and they're not really scoring technically. They're just kind of watching fights. But the fact that they booed Tecia Torres, or Tecia Pennington, when she's talking about her, who I forgot at this point, her mom or grandma's breast cancer, really gross. And then the fact that they just dismissed, the fact that they just weren't watching the fight correctly, even though I just said that they shouldn't really be watching the fight correctly, them thinking that Esparza won this fight is hilarious. The commentary thinking that Esparza won this fight is that's appropriate because the commentary can't score to save their lives. So that's a separate thing. Let's jump into this. Hold on. Before we even get into the scorecards, another thing that was spoiled for me was the narrative surrounding the judges and the refs. Now, I do want to point something out. As you know, this show is always about just crapping on the judges. But I'm just going to be honest here. In terms of someone getting robbed, the judges didn't do a bad job tonight. On that point, in terms of individual scorecards, that's a different thing. We'll get into that. The refs, on the other hand, I think the refs were absolutely garbage. I think the only people who should be getting shat on are the refs, and we'll get to it right now. Okay, that's the narrative of this card, is that it's in Utah, the crowd is really enthusiastic, and the refs were dictating the fights. The refs were essentially changing how the fights were fought, and that's really dangerous. And I've noticed that's like the second time that's happened in Utah. It seems to be a Utah thing. Maybe the Utah Commission is just like, hey, we're going to eliminate a section of MMA, which is the clinch game. There was zero clinch game. No one could do any clinching. No one could do any clinching on this fight card. If you were in the clinch for 5 seconds and were inactive, it's over. It's a wrap. A lot of work to finish, which is kind of vague. If we're just going to be honest here, you're in the clinch. The goal of being in the clinch isn't always to get a takedown. One purpose, a reason to be in the clinch is to procrastinate. A reason to be in the clinch is to get off tiny shots here and there. A reason to be in the clinch is to take someone down. A reason to be in the clinch is to, I think I already said procrastinate, stall, so to speak, but is to do slight damage in there. You don't have to be in the clinch to get a takedown. And the fact that every time someone was in there and was immediately stopped was really gross. And it's what made this card really grimy at certain points. Let's start off with the first honorable mention: Esparza versus Pennington. Okay, I had Pennington winning 29-28. Last two rounds went to Pennington. The first round went to Esparza. Okay, we go to the first round. The first round, Pennington outstruck Esparza on the feet by about 6 strikes. But then Esparza got a takedown with some ground and pound for about 2+ minutes. Esparza wins this round solely on the fact that she has 2 minutes left on the clock and she lands enough ground and pound to kind of win this round. She doesn't win this round convincingly. She wins this round barely. Barely wins this round. Essentially, she doesn't want to. I keep saying essentially. She doesn't administer heavy levels of ground and pound, and that's a theme of this card by all the women who fought on this card. Really, is that when someone got taken down, except for Pena later in the rounds, but when someone got someone else on the ground, they just laid on them and did little to no ground and pound. And that's what Esparza did in this first round, but she did enough to win. You go to the second round where Esparza had 2 takedowns. But when I say she had 2 takedowns, she had 2 takedowns for maybe like 2 seconds. Pennington got up almost immediately, and she outstruck Esparza by about 8 strikes. That's her round. And you go to the last round, and this is the round where I'm so thankful that the judges just aren't horrendously bad. These are how you know these are good judges. For one, they didn't listen to the crowd, because the crowd at certain moments in this card could have really fucked over a lot of people. It could have fucked over a lot of people. It could have administered really, really, really bad scorecards. And this is an example where in the third round, Esparza had a takedown with little ground and pound, and that little ground and pound is at the end. It's at the very end of this round. The very end of this round, Esparza gets a takedown. And when I say little ground and pound, I mean very little ground and pound. She just flailed to the end of the horn. But the majority of this fight, the majority of this round, is Pennington outstriking Esparza by 10+ strikes throughout the entirety of this round up until the end, most of them being leg kicks. Okay, Pennington wins this round decisively, hence the 29-28. Before we even get to the scorecards, Esparza retired. Congratulations. Commentary, Joe and DC thinking that Esparza won because either they couldn't score correctly or they're just too enthralled by the crowd clapping for Esparza, her retiring. It's just another, I don't even know what to say. It's just another example of the commentary being bad on this card. But here we go. So we go to the scorecard. Saul Diamante has a 29-28, all of 29-28 for Pennington. He gives the first round to Pennington and gives the last round to Esparza. Listen, this is like Saul Diamante in a box. We'll get a good scorecard, and then we'll get a good scorecard that's scored wrong, and then we'll get a bad scorecard. This doesn't make any sense at all. 0 sense. He gives the first round to Pennington. No. I'm assuming his mindset was that Esparza didn't do enough on the ground here. Make this make sense to me. Esparza doesn't do enough on the ground in the first round, so he gives it to Pennington. He gives the last round to Esparza when Esparza was outstruck for basically 4 minutes, and then gets a takedown and lands, 3 ground strikes? Therefore, she wins. It makes no fucking sense. Honorable mention to Saul Diamante. He gets the scorecard right, but he just puts it in the wrong places. Steven Farragher, his scorecard reflects mine. That's the correct scorecard. Last 2 rounds for Pennington, first round for Esparza. And then Dan, what's his name? Dan Furse. He has a 30-27. That's ridiculous. Honorable mention there. He should have given the first round to Esparza. We go to the next honorable mention, and that's Almeida versus Potieria. This fight will be remembered as the bad ref fight. This is where the bad reffing starts. Okay, some ref named Dave, no relation, misses 40 eye pokes. No points are taken. 40 eye pokes. He's rushing Potieria into fighting again because either he doesn't believe that his eye was poked or something. I just don't think he understands what's going on. Couple groin strikes. quick separations in the clinch. This is where the quick separation starts to happen. Just really, really, really quick separations. And I'm not saying he should be biased towards Topuria, but given that Topuria has been fouled most of this time, I would think he would give him more time in the clinch. No, he's just, he thinks he's doing something good. In fact, he reffed this entire fight very badly. There are moments in this fight where Topuria has a dominant position and he takes it away from him. And that can really change a couple things on the scorecards. And in fact, all of these things benefit Almeida. It was poorly refed. So let's just honorable mention it, Dave. That's just a terrible job he did. But I had this 30-27 for Almeida. Okay, we're back. There was a little miscue. But like I was saying, I had this 30-27 for Almeida. In the first round, Almeida outstruck Potieria by about 6 strikes. Potieria had a takedown. In the second round, Potieria had 2 takedowns, really quick takedowns. He didn't really do anything with them. Almeida had a submission attempt. He also had a reversal with heavy ground and pound for a minute, so that round belongs to Almeida as well. And then in the third round, Potieria had a reversal. Almeida barely outstruck Potieria, and so that round belongs to Almeida as well. That's where you get the 30-27. You go to the judges' scorecards. If I can find them, you go to the judges' scorecards, and 30-27, Steven Farragher, Dan First, 30-27, and then Chris Lee, 29-28. Honorable mention to Chris Lee. That's nonsense. It's 30-27 the whole way, despite all the goofy nonsenses by the judge, or by the ref. So there you have it on that. You go to the next honorable mention, and it's Hubbard versus Hernandez. Okay. This fight ended in a split decision. I had this 29-28 for Hubbard, close marker in the second round. You can argue this fight for both people. You really can. That second round is very, very close. I give the first round to Hernandez, and I give the last 2 rounds to Hubbard. You go to the first round, Hernandez outstruck Hubbard by about 11 strikes. He was outstriking him well in this first round for Hernandez. You go to the second round, it's close on strikes. I give the edge to Hubbard, but it's really close. I mean, Hubbard maybe outstruck him by 1 to 2 strikes, but it's close. I can't put my hat on it. And then you go to the third round where Hubbard outstruck Hernandez by about 6 to 7 strikes. And then we get a split decision, and you guessed it. It went to Hernandez. You go to the judges' scorecards, and one of them is all over the place. So you have Dan First, and you have Steven Farragher. Both of their scorecards reflect the same. They give the first 2 rounds to Hernandez, and then the last round to Hubbard. And then Chris Lee, again with the goofy scorecard, he gives the first round to Hubbard. That's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. Hubbard was outstruck very, very clear. Honorable mention to Chris Lee. We go to the next honorable mention. We go to the next honorable mention. Let me pull up my thing here. And we go to Rodriguez versus Lucindo. Okay, this fight also ended in a split decision. Nonsense, guys. Nonsense. 29-28 for Lucindo. First rounds for Lucindo. That's how I had it. Last round for Rodriguez. In the first round. I'm sorry. This was before I even get to the scorecards. This was another example. Mark Goddard was on this fight. He did a great job on stopping Lucindo from putting her chin into Rodriguez's eyes. But beyond that, this is another fight where when they were clinching, it was an immediate separation. When Lucindo was inactive, just a lot of work to finish. You need to try to get out of there. You need to hurry up. Just a lot of that. And for me, that's annoying. Personally, I find it very annoying. But again, it's really messing up the flow of some of these fights. And I understand that the whole point is they need to be working at all times, but they're really messing up the flow of a lot of these fights, in my opinion. But back to the fight. in the first round, Lucindo outstruck Rodriguez by 5 strikes. She had a takedown with some ground and pound. Rodriguez made Lucindo stumble. I wouldn't call it like a drop, but she made her stumble a little bit, and she was slightly active on the bottom. But it's Lucindo's round. The second round is close on the feet, but Lucindo had a takedown with a little bit of ground and pound. And then the third round is close on the feet. Lucindo had 2 takedowns, but she did pretty much. When I say she did nothing, I mean she did zero. Oh my god, she did 0 things. 0 things with those takedowns. Rodriguez was. The difference in this round is, despite it being close on the feet, Lucindo was more active. I'm so sorry. Rodriguez was more active on the bottom. She was outstriking her from the bottom, and she was outstriking her on top. She had some ground and pound on top as well. So there you have it on that. You go to the judges' scorecards, and just, again, weird scoring. Really weird scoring. Dan first, he gives the first round to Rodriguez. That doesn't make any sense. that doesn't make any fucking sense. But, hey, it's just bad scoring. It's really bad scoring all around. He gives the first round to Rodriguez, honorable mention. Gives the last round to Lucindo, honorable mention. Just honorable mention. Dan first. It's terrible. Then you go to Mike Bell. Mike Bell's the only one with the correct scorecard. He gives the last round to Rodriguez, gives the first round to Lucindo, and then Steven Farragher also has a terrible scorecard. Gives the first and the last. Gives the first round to Rodriguez, and gives the last round to Rodriguez. Last round, that's fine, obviously. First round to Rodriguez, terrible. Honorable mention to Farragher. All right, we go to the next honorable mention. I'm kind of flying through these now. This one was interesting. Thomas versus Buckley. This should have been scored correctly. I hate looking at the Twitter scorecards because I think the Twitter scorecards are wrong. Half of the media people can't score to save their lives. I'm so confused as to why they show them on the board. I feel like they show them on the board to confuse the fuck out of us. Thompson versus Buckley. Buckley wins by KO. I didn't think that would happen in the third round. Guys, this was 1-1 heading into the third. First of all, the commentary was being stupid. They thought it was 2-0 heading into the third. I'm tired of hearing commentary scorecards, especially Anik, who, even during the Hubbard fight, I remember him saying something like, oh, definitive round here for this guy. And I'm like, that was close. Not a definitive round. What are you guys talking about? Back to this fight. This should have been scored correctly. If you're a really good judge, I think you scored this correctly. Let's start off with the first round. Thompson outstrikes Buckley by 5 strikes. Buckley has 2 takedowns, but these are takedowns that happen throughout the fight. And he has 2 takedowns, and he does nothing with these takedowns. Thompson gets up with ever the quickness and continues to outstrike him throughout this entire round. This round belongs to Thompson. You go to the second round where Buckley barely outstrikes Thompson. He outstrikes him by about 2 strikes. But he also has 2 takedowns. So he outstrikes him in this round, and he has 2 takedowns. This round belongs to Buckley. And if you score this round for Thompson, you're trying to replicate the feeling that happened in the first round, but it's not the same thing because Buckley's the one outstriking Thompson in this round. So that would just be bad scoring, really. You go to the judges' scorecard. Derek Cleary, his scorecard reflects mine. First round for Thompson, second round for Buckley. And then the next 2 judges, they just flub it. I don't know what the fuck they're thinking. Saul Diamante gives the first round to Buckley and the second round to Buckley. Honorable mention there. Just, I don't even know what to say. Steven Farragher gives the first round to Thompson, second round to Thompson. Honorable mention there. This was heading towards a split decision, whether you like it or not, if this finished in the third. Now, if I remember correctly, Buckley's winning the third based off of strikes. But it was headed towards a split decision regardless. And given that Utah crowd being super pro Thompson, they would have booed Buckley if that KO didn't come out. Go to the next honorable mention, and that's Ketlin Vieira versus Kayla Harrison. 29-28. First round for Harrison, second round for Vieira, third round for Harrison. If you score this at 30-27, you just kill yourself. I don't, like, at that point, you're not even watching. You're just pro Harrison. I don't know what's going on. 29-28, Harrison. Is Harrison going to get a title shot from this? I hope not, because, I don't know. Fight sucked. Fight was boring. Back to this, though. You go to the first round. Close on the feet. Am I reading the right one? Where am I at? Yeah, I am reading the right. Close on the feet, and it was and it was close in the clinch too. They were both striking in the clinch. Harrison had a takedown with some ground and pound for about a minute plus. That round belongs to Harrison. And then you go to the second round. You go to the second round where Vieira started to outstrike Harrison by about 7 strikes. Both of them were active in the clinch, but Vieira was really outstriking Harrison throughout the entirety of this round. You go to the third round, Harrison gets a takedown with ground and pound for about 2+ minutes. And Vieira was active on the bottom, but not enough to win this round. Harrison definitely landed enough ground and pound, and she had a takedown. So you give the fight to Harrison. You go to the judges' scorecards, and only one judge scored it correctly. Stephen Farragher, 29-28 for Harrison. He gives the second round to Vieira. That's correct. Saul Diamano, Derek Cleary both decide that Kayla Harrison won all 3 rounds. Honorable mention above them. That's ridiculous. You go to the next honorable mention, and that's Dolidze versus Holland. Fight ended in a TK on the second round. Technically the end of the first round, but I just put it under the second round. Holland hurts himself. He broke his rib or something. And that's where you get the TKO. In terms of scoring the first round, though, Holland was outstriking Dolidze on the feet. He was outstriking him by about 7 strikes. But then Dolidze gets a takedown with some ground and pound for 2 minutes. And it's pretty much solidified. Now, he's winning up until... When I say winning, he doesn't land on a lot of ground and pound until that sequence where Holland breaks his rib. But he's winning. For lack of a better phrase, he's winning. And then when Holland breaks his rib, the round is securely his, where he just unloads on Holland. And there you have it, a 10-9 for Dolidze in that round. One judge decides to be weird. Saul Diamano, Mike Bell, their scorecards reflect mine. 10-9 for Dolidze. Chris Lee, I guess once he heard the ow, he was like... His brain went into 10-8 mode, and he gave a 10-8 to Dolidze. Honorable mention, it's an unnecessary 10-8. There's no need for the 10-8. He wants to be Michael Bisping so bad, where he's like, that's a 10-7. That's a 10-6. It's fucking stupid. It's nonsense. Honorable mention there. And then you go to one of the more controversial fights in this card. This fight was spoiled for me. So I didn't watch the fight before watching it for real, but I was told that Bautista robbed Aldo. And I was thinking to myself, damn, was that really a robbery? Was it really a robbery? And I watched it and I was like, no. Whoever thinks this is a robbery is fucking stupid. They're dumb. They're goober idiots. No offense to MMA Guru. I like him. This fight ended in a split decision. Aldo versus Bautista. 29-28. You get the first round of Bautista, last round of Bautista. Duh. You can't find 2 rounds here for Aldo. You cannot. On any planet, you cannot find 2 rounds for the King of Rio, Jose Aldo. In the first round, Bautista outstrikes Aldo on the feet and in the clinch. A lot of this fight is in the clinch. Where the goofy ref is basically threatening Bautista to get... And now, Bautista is active in the clinch. There should have been not a separation at all. And you know what's even funny about this? The commentary is complaining throughout the entire card about how quick these guys are getting pulled off. And then the moment we get to this fight, not a sound, not a peep. They'll crap on the non-regular MMA ref, but the moment we get to the more experienced MMA refs, it's like, okay, well, we'll leave it. We won't say anything. No. Mark Goddard, his dumbass, should have been shat on, and fucking Mike Beltran should have been shat on for quick releases of the clinch. That is a part of MMA. I don't know why all of a sudden it's just like, oh, it's boring. So therefore, do you know how many fights we had to watch? Do you know how many Pennington fights we had to watch that were in the clinch? Do you know how many Holly Holm fights we had to watch that were in the clinch? You don't get to just suddenly wake up in Utah and go, you know what we're not going to do today is clinch. No, we're still going to clinch. I don't care if it's a pay-per-view. Regardless of that point, a lot of this fight was in the clinch. And Bautista outstruck Aldo on the feet and in the clinch. My calculation is about 15 strikes. First of all, I want to say the strike numbers are off on everything. I don't care. We're going to get into this might be my most controversial card, but we'll get into that later. The strike numbers are off. He outstrikes him by 15 strikes in the first round. I said that 7 times already. Second round, Aldo outstrikes Bautista. He outstrikes him pretty clear in this round. He outstrikes him by 6 strikes. And then in the third round, most of this round in the third round is in the clinch. Okay, every time Aldo gets into space, Bautista pushes it back on the fence, and he outstrikes him by about 3 strikes. But that's in open range, and most of it's in the clinch. Aldo didn't do enough in this round to definitively take this round. Bautista outstruck him, had him on the fence, and he outstruck him by about 3 strikes. Simple. I don't know where this weird thing about Aldo getting robbed comes from. Bautista basically implemented the Marab strategy, just except Bautista maybe got hit a little more. That's pretty much it. So it's weird that they call this a robbery. It's not even close to a robbery. Not even close to a robbery. We go to the next honorable mention, and this is Pennington versus Pena. I had this 48-47 for Pena, and I had 3 close markers. This fight is close on the margins. Now, I don't think it's close in terms of the fight. I actually don't believe this fight is close. It's close on the cards, but I don't think it's and in the margins. But I don't think it's close as in like Let me see if I can rephrase this. I think you could score this for either person. Let me say that. 48-47 for Pena. I definitively scored this for Pena. I have reasons why I scored this for Pena. And I think you can argue the opposite for Pennington. So let's go to the first round. I put a close mark on the first, the second, and the fourth, and the fifth round. So we go to the first round. I had a 10-9 for Pennington. Let's start off with the fact that the strike numbers are just off. The first round displayed that Pena was outstriking Pennington. No, I just don't agree with that. It's not factual. Pennington outstrikes Pena by about 2 strikes. So because of the margin is so slow, I objectively put a close marker. You can argue that Pena won this first round. So there's many ways you can line up the margins here. But again, 48-47, I think everyone agrees universally, 48-47. You go to the second round where Pennington barely outstrikes Pena on the feet, but Pennington has 2 takedowns. One of the takedowns is on the ground, one of them is when she's on her back. Close marker again, because with these 2 takedowns, Pena does essentially nothing. When she has her back, she does nothing. When she's on the ground, Pena also does little to nothing. And then Pennington barely outstruck her on the feet. So you lean towards Pena for the 2 takedowns. Again, put a close marker just in case someone wants to give the Pereira versus Jan argument of strikes versus takedowns. Cool. Then you go to the third round. These next 2 rounds are definite. Like, there's no argument here. I don't think anyone would ever argue these 2 rounds on the planet. You go to round 3. Third round is for Pena. Pena outstruck Pennington on the feet by about 7 strikes, and she had a takedown with some ground and pound and a submission attempt. That round belongs to Pena, no doubt. You go to the fourth round. Pennington outstrikes and drops Pena. She outstrikes Pena by about 6 strikes. That's definitively Pennington's round. And then you go to the fifth round. I put a close marker here because on my strike count, Pena outstruck Pennington. The strike numbers show that Pennington is outstriking Pena. I don't think that's accurate. She's definitely pushing the pace. She's pushing the pace, 1,000%. But she's not outstriking Pena. Pena is outstriking Pennington. My count is 3 strikes. She's outstriking Pennington. Yet everyone was everything made it seem as though Pennington was outstriking Pena, and I just don't think that's accurate. The strike numbers made it seem like that. The commentators made it seem like that. No way. And I don't. And through my calculations, I don't think anyone was robbed. If Pennington had won the fight, I don't think it's a robbery. And if Pena had won, I don't think that's a robbery. We go to the scorecards, where the scorecards disagree with me, at least on the last round, definitively. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we even get to the Pennington thing, I just want to run through the Aldo Bautista one real quick. Derek Cleary and Mike Bell, their scorecards are the same. Their scorecards reflect mine, 29-28 for Bautista. And then Chris Lee gives the last 2 rounds to Aldo. Giving the last round to Aldo is nonsense. Honorable mention to Chris Lee. That's ridiculous. Back to the Pennington versus Pena fight. So, Saul D'Amato, he gives the first 3 rounds to Pena. I don't disagree here. I don't. I put a close marker on the first round. I think you can argue the first round for Pena because the strike numbers are very close. There's nothing I can really argue here. He gives the last 2 rounds to Pennington. Again, I won't argue with it. Again, all 3 judges gave the last round to Pennington. I disagree with that. I can't argue with all 3 gave it to him. And I put a close marker again, but still, I disagree with that. And there you have it, 48-47. Derek Cleary, he gives the first round to Pennington. Next 2 rounds he gives to Pena. Last 2 rounds he gives to Pennington. Again, can't argue there. And then Mike Bell, his scorecard reflects Saul D'Amato. So there you have it. I mean, it's really close. It's really fucking close. And that's about it. You go to the next honorable mention. And this is very interesting. This is very interesting because I think this is shit scoring. I think this is really shit scoring. Pereira versus Rountree, the fight ends in a TKO. Thank God it ends in a TKO because there's a chance that they were going to rob Pereira. This is 2-1 Pereira. At the very least, it's 2-1 Pereira. I have 3-0 Pereira. Close marker on the second round. I know. You can even maybe say I'm even wrong on the second round, that you can give the second round to Rountree. But let's go through this. 3-0. I had this 10-9 in the first, second, and the third for Pereira. Let's start off with the first round. Pereira outstrikes Rountree. He outstrikes him by 3 strikes. Again, very low margin, but he outstrikes Rountree. There's no way on this planet that Rountree wins round 1. Not at all. It was close in terms of strikes, but not close enough to give him the round. Pereira was outstriking Rountree well enough to win this round. Yet, all 3 judges, Saul D'Amato, Derek Cleary, and Chris Lee, real quick, all 3 of them get an honorable mention. This is fucking stupid. This is insane. 2-1 Rountree before the finish is nuts. But we'll move on. They then give the second round to him. This is where I think this is interesting. Second round, Rountree kind of drops Pereira. Listen, I don't know if they're going to count this as a drop. He doesn't fully drop. He doesn't really hit the floor. He kind of just buckles to his knees and comes back up. If you want to count it as a drop, count it as a drop. If that's the case, then he wins the round. My calculations show, yes, he got dropped, sure. Pereira outstruck Rountree by about 6 strikes. I think he won that round, but I put a close marker because he did like a drop, basically. So let's just say it's 1-1. But again, mine is 3-0 on my scorecards. 1-1. The third round. Let's go to the third round real quick. All 3 judges have the third round for Pereira. Thankfully, they have that accurately. Pereira outstrikes Rountree by about 9 strikes in the third round. And then that leads to the TKO finish. This should have been 2-1 Pereira. This wasn't 2-1 Rountree. I'm so surprised they scored this like this. I'm really confused as to why they scored it like that, but that's neither here nor there. That's all I have. Thank you all for listening, and God bless.